so now we're going to look at some language techniques, and we're going to start with metaphor and simile. So what I find students often can do is identify that something's a metaphor or a simile, but it's in explaining the effect of them and writing about that well that they usually don't do the best job or get confused. So the key thing to remember is that a metaphor and a simile are methods of comparison, and they're actually exactly the same technique with the same effect. The only difference is a simile will always use like or as, whereas a metaphor won't. Often definitions of metaphor go something like, when you say something is something it's not. So, for example, he is a pig, but it's not always in that form. So I think that's where there can be some confusion about identifying a metaphor. But if you keep in mind the fact that it's a method of comparison, and if it uses like or as, it's a simile, and everything else is a metaphor, then you'll be fine in terms of getting the distinction there. So let's have a look at some examples. So the first one I've got here is a simile. So she smelled like a peppermint drop. So in this particular example, we can see that the person's smell is being compared to a peppermint drop. So when you're deconstructing metaphors and similes, you always want to do it in a couple of steps. The first one is what is compared to what. So you've got the smell is compared to a peppermint drop. Then you want to look at the qualities that the peppermint drop actually has. So a peppermint drop is going to be quite refreshing. It's quite a good smell, and then you start then having a look at how that actually adds to the overall effect of the sentence or the imagery being created. So in that particular one, it creates quite a positive, refreshing image of this particular character. And something quite welcoming. So you can get a sense of what that character is about through that simile. So what's compared to what? What's the qualities of the thing they're comparing it to? So the peppermint drop, and then how does that apply back to the original object that they're trying to create an image of? Similar thing for metaphor. So an example, you never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb into his skin and walk around in it. Now, clearly you can't actually climb into someone's skin, literally, but you can also see it's not as simple as just saying he is a pig. There's no use of the word is. Okay, so that's a metaphor because there's no like or as, and you can see that there's a comparison being made between understanding a person and getting into their skin. All right, so what's compared to what? You've got a person or needing to understand a person being compared to climbing into their skin, which gives you an understanding of the fact that you need to look at something from another person's perspective. So that climbing into a skin really enhances one's understanding of being able to look at something from another person's point of view. Climbing into someone's skin is also very intimate. You can't actually do that, obviously, but if you're actually getting into someone's skin, it's very deep. It's very intimate. It's being another person, basically. So it sort of enhances the idea of how much you need to really consider something from someone else's point of view before you make that judgment. Another example is Coleridge's "This lime tree bower, my prison." So in that situation, you've got the lime tree bower being compared to a prison, and then you look at the qualities of a prison. So a prison is you're trapped, you don't have any freedom, you're confined, and so that is then illustrating the fact that for this individual, this particular tree is serving as somewhere that entraps him, and that's the image that he's trying to get across there. So quick recap: what metaphor, simile uses like or as, what's compared to what are the qualities of the thing they're trying to compare it to, and then how does that add to the image or overall understanding of what's being communicated about the tree or the smell or the need to understand another person.